I was sitting on our cozy green couch, flipping through a book about ancient civilizations, when Daniel walked in. He was grinning from ear to ear, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Rachel, honey, you won't believe what happened at work today," he exclaimed, practically bouncing on his toes. I couldn't help but smile. His enthusiasm was contagious. "What is it, love?" I asked, setting my book aside. He plopped down next to me, his hand finding mine. "Remember that big project I've been working on? Well, the client loved it. They're implementing it company-wide, and my boss hinted at a promotion." I threw my arms around him, genuinely thrilled. "Oh, Daniel, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." I peppered his face with kisses, making him laugh. As we settled back into the couch, his arm around my shoulders, I couldn't help but marvel at how perfect our life seemed. We'd been married for 6 years, and every day felt like a blessing. I was 31, working as a librarian at the local library, a job I adored, and Daniel, at 33, was killing it in his career as a software engineer. "We should celebrate," I suggested, already mentally scanning our wine rack. "How about I whip up your favorite pasta and we open that bottle of red we've been saving?" Daniel's eyes lit up. "You're the best, Rach. What did I do to deserve you?" I playfully swatted his arm. "Oh, stop it. You charm her. But seriously, I'm the lucky one here." As I bustled around the kitchen, pulling out ingredients and pots, I couldn't help but reflect on our journey. We'd met at a mutual friend's barbecue, bonding over our shared love of obscure sci-fi novels. It was like finding a kindred spirit, someone who not only got my nerdy references, but could volley them right back. Our courtship had been a whirlwind of late-night conversations, weekend adventures, and stolen kisses. When Daniel proposed 2 years later, on a moonlit beach with the waves crashing around us, I didn't hesitate for a second before saying yes. Now, as I stirred the sauce and listened to Daniel humming off-key in the living room, I felt a wave of contentment wash over me. We'd built a beautiful life together in our cozy apartment. Sure, we didn't have kids yet, but we were happy just being us for now. The pasta was almost done when Daniel wandered into the kitchen, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. Smells amazing," he murmured, nuzzling my neck. I leaned back into his embrace, relishing the warmth and security I felt in his arms. "Love you," I whispered. "Love you more," he replied, giving me a squeeze before grabbing plates to set the table. As we sat down to our celebratory dinner, clinking glasses and sharing excited chatter about Daniel's project, I couldn't imagine being happier. I had a fulfilling career, a loving husband, and a future full of possibilities stretching out before us. Little did I know that this perfect moment was just the calm before the storm. If only I could have frozen time right there, with Daniel's eyes shining with love across the table, the taste of good wine on my lips, and my heart full of hope and joy. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. And sometimes, the things you think you know best, the people you trust most, can surprise you in ways you never imagined. For now, though, I was blissfully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. I raised my glass, smiling at the man I loved more than anything in the world. "To us," I toasted. "To us," Daniel echoed, his eyes locked on mine. In that moment, everything felt right with the world. I had no idea how quickly it would all come crashing down. I was folding laundry when I first noticed something odd. Daniel's phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I glanced over, catching a glimpse of a message notification. The name, Sarah from work, flashed across the screen, along with a winking emoji. I frowned, pausing mid-fold. Sarah? I didn't remember Daniel mentioning a Sarah before. I shook my head, pushing the thought away. It was probably nothing. Daniel had lots of coworkers I didn't know. Still, a tiny seed of unease had been planted. A few days later, we were having dinner when Daniel's phone chimed again. He glanced at it, a small smile playing on his lips as he quickly typed out a response. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Oh yeah," he replied, not looking up. "Just work stuff." I nodded, but something felt off. Since when did work stuff make him smile like that? As the weeks passed, I started noticing more little things. Daniel seemed to be glued to his phone, always angling the screen away from me. He'd step out of the room to take calls, his voice lowered. And those late nights at the office were becoming more and more frequent. One evening, I decided to broach the subject. "You've been working a lot lately," I said, curling up next to him on the couch. "Everything all right at the office?" Daniel tensed slightly, almost imperceptibly. "Yeah, just busy with this new project. You know how it is." I nodded, not entirely convinced. "I was thinking maybe we could plan a weekend getaway soon. It's been a while since we've had some quality time together." He hesitated before answering. "That sounds nice, but I'm not sure when I'll be free. Let's play it by ear, okay?" I tried to ignore the pang of disappointment in my chest. "Sure, no problem." Later that night, I tossed and turned, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? Daniel loved me, I knew that. We had a good life together. But why did it suddenly feel like he was slipping away? I rolled over, watching Daniel's sleeping form. In the dim light, I could make out the curve of his cheek, the familiar line of his jaw. This was the face I'd woken up to for years, the man I'd built my life with. Surely, if something was wrong, he'd tell me. Right? The next morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Daniel rushed in, looking flustered. "Have you seen my blue tie?" he asked, rifling through his briefcase. "The one with stripes?" "I think it's in the laundry basket," I replied. He let out an exasperated sigh. "No, not that one. The solid blue one. I need it for a meeting today." I frowned. "I don't remember seeing it. When did you last wear it?" Daniel paused for a moment, a flicker of something, panic, crossing his face. I'm not sure, maybe last week. It's fine, I'll find another one." As he hurried back to the bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was hiding something. Since when did Daniel care so much about which tie he wore to work? That afternoon, I found myself distracted at the library, my mind wandering from the tasks at hand. I kept replaying little moments in my head, searching for clues. The way Daniel's laugh seemed forced lately when we were together, how he'd stopped asking about my day. The sudden influx of work emergencies that pulled him away from our plans. Was I reading too much into things? Maybe Daniel was just stressed about his job. Maybe I was being clingy and insecure. But the knot in my stomach refused to loosen. On my lunch break, I found myself scrolling through our recent text messages. The I love yous were still there, but they felt hollow somehow. When was the last time Daniel had sent me a random sweet message just because? When was the last time he'd surprised me with flowers or suggested we try that new restaurant down the street? I put my phone down, feeling silly. Relationships evolve, I told myself. We can't always be in the honeymoon phase. But still, the doubts lingered. That evening, I made an effort to reconnect. I cooked Daniel's favorite meal and suggested we watch a movie together. He agreed, but seemed distracted throughout, constantly checking his phone. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep the irritation out of my voice. "Oh, yeah," he replied, barely looking up. "Just some emails I need to respond to." I bit my lip, fighting back the urge to snap at him. Instead, I took a deep breath and said, "Daniel, can we talk for a minute?" He finally put the phone down, turning to face me. "What's up?" I hesitated, unsure how to voice my concerns without sounding accusatory. I feel like we've been a bit disconnected lately. Is everything all right?" Daniel's expression softened. "Of course, Rach. I'm sorry if I've been distant. Work's just been crazy, you know?" I nodded, wanting to believe him. "I know, I just miss you." He pulled me into a hug, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. But as I breathed in his familiar scent, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something had changed between us. As we settled back into watching the movie, Daniel's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, a small smile playing on his lips before he quickly schooled his features. And just like that, the doubts came rushing back. As the weeks went by, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. Daniel's behavior became increasingly erratic, and I found myself constantly on edge, analyzing his every move. It was exhausting, but I couldn't help it. Something was off, and I needed to know why. One morning, as I was making breakfast, Daniel announced he had to go on a business trip. "It's a last-minute thing," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I'll be gone for the weekend." I froze, spatula in hand. This weekend, but we had plans to visit my parents. He ran a hand through his hair, looking flustered. "I know. I'm sorry. It's a really important client meeting." "I can't get out of it." I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Okay, where's the meeting?" "Oh, just in the city," he replied vaguely. "You know, the usual conference center downtown." Something about his response felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. "All right, well, have a good trip, I guess." As soon as Daniel left for work, I sank into a chair, my mind racing. This wasn't the first time he'd canceled our plans for work, but something about this felt different, more secretive. I picked up my phone, scrolling through our recent texts. The last few conversations were brief, mostly logistics about groceries or bills. Gone were the silly memes he used to send me, the random "I love you" messages in the middle of the day. With a sigh, I opened my camera roll, looking at our old photos. There we were, grinning on our last vacation, Daniel's arm around me as we stood on a beautiful beach. When was the last time we'd taken a picture together? When was the last time we'd even gone on a date? That evening, I called my best friend, Lisa. "Am I being crazy?" I asked after explaining the situation. "Maybe I'm just overreacting." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Honey, I don't think you're crazy. Trust your gut. Has Daniel given you any other reasons to be suspicious?" I thought about it. Well, he's always on his phone, but he never leaves it lying around anymore. And he's been working late a lot. But when I ask about his projects, he's really vague. "That does sound fishy," Lisa agreed. "Have you tried talking to him about it?" I sighed. "I've tried, but he just brushes it off. Says he's stressed about work." "Maybe it is just work," Lisa said gently. "But if I were you, I'd keep my eyes open." After we hung up, I felt even more unsettled. Was I really considering the possibility that Daniel, my Daniel, could be hiding something from me? The thought made me feel sick. The next day, I found myself distracted at work, unable to focus on cataloging the new arrivals. My mind kept wandering to Daniel, wondering what he was really doing on his business trip. During my lunch break, I sat in my car staring at my phone. Before I could talk myself out of it, I opened the tracking app we'd installed years ago for safety reasons. My finger hovered over Daniel's icon. Was I really going to do this? With a deep breath, I pressed it, the map zoomed in, and my heart sank. The little blue dot wasn't anywhere near the conference center downtown. It was at a hotel, in another city. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe the meeting got moved, maybe. But deep down, I knew. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they formed was breaking my heart. I drove home in a daze, barely registering the familiar streets. As soon as I got in, I went straight to our bedroom, opening Daniel's closet. His suitcase was gone, along with some of his nicer clothes. But it was what I found in the back of the drawer that made my blood run cold. A receipt for a fancy restaurant from last week. On a night he told me he was working late. I sank to the floor, the paper clutched in my trembling hands. How long had this been going on? How many lies had he told me? As I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion were still there, but now there was something else. Anger, determination. I stood up, wiping my tears. If Daniel was hiding something, I was going to find out what it was. No more burying my head in the sand. No more making excuses for him. I grabbed my laptop, opening a new document. It was time to start putting the pieces together. Every late night at the office, every mysterious text, every canceled plan, I was going to track it all. As I typed, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me hoped I was wrong, that there was some innocent explanation for all of this. But another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, knew that our perfect life had been built on a foundation of lies, and I was going to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I spent the entire weekend in a frenzy of investigation. With Daniel away on his supposed business trip, I had free reign of our apartment and his belongings. I felt guilty at first, like I was violating his privacy, but then I remembered the lies, the secrecy, and my resolve hardened. I started with his desk drawer, rifling through papers and old receipts. Most were mundane, gas station stops, grocery runs. But then I found it. A crumpled receipt from a jewelry store, dated just a few weeks ago. My heart raced. Our anniversary wasn't for months, and my birthday had already passed. Who was he buying jewelry for? Next, I turned to his laptop. I knew his password, or at least, I thought I did. But when I tried to log in, access denied, he changed it. When? Why? The questions swirled in my mind, each one feeding my growing suspicion. I picked up his iPad instead. To my surprise, it unlocked with our old shared passcode. As I scrolled through his apps, one caught my eye. A messaging app I'd never seen before. My fingers trembled as I opened it. There were only a few conversations, all with usernames I didn't recognize. I tapped on the most recent one, my stomach churning. "Can't wait to see you this weekend," read the latest message. It was from someone called S. Work Friend. The timestamp matched the start of Daniel's business trip. I scrolled up, reading snippets of their conversation. Inside jokes, flirty comments, plans to meet up. With each message, I felt my world crumbling around me. "This can't be happening," I whispered to the empty room. But it was. The evidence was right there in front of me. I spent hours combing through every app, every folder on his iPad. I found more hidden conversations, more plans for secret meetups. Some dated back months. How long had this been going on right under my nose? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across our living room, I finally put the iPad down. My eyes were burning, my head pounding, but I wasn't done yet. I pulled out my own phone, opening our shared cloud storage. There, buried in a folder labeled Work Docs 2023, I found a series of photos. My hand flew to my mouth as I swiped through them. Daniel, arm around a woman I'd never seen before, both of them smiling, looking cozy at what appeared to be a restaurant. Another photo, the same woman. This time in a hotel room. I felt sick. I wanted to stop looking, to pretend I'd never seen any of this, but I couldn't. I had to know everything. I dug deeper, checking our bank statements. There it was. Transactions for hotels, restaurants, gifts, all on days Daniel had claimed to be working late or out with colleagues. As the pieces came together, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The uncertainty of the past few weeks was gone, replaced by a cold, hard truth. Daniel was cheating on me. I sat on our couch, the same couch where we'd cuddled and laughed and built our life together, and let the tears fall. How could he do this to us? To me? I thought we were happy. I thought what we had was special. But as I cried, something else bubbled up inside me. Anger. Fierce, burning anger. How dare he? How dare he lie to my face, day after day? How dare he throw away everything we'd built together? I stood up, wiping my eyes. No more tears. No more self-pity. It was time for action. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down everything I'd discovered. Times, dates, locations, every lie, every secret meeting, every hidden transaction. If Daniel thought he could get away with this, he had another thing coming. As I wrote, a plan began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to confront him right away. No, I was going to gather more evidence. Concrete, undeniable proof. And when I had everything I needed, I would confront him in a way he'd never see coming. I pulled out my phone and called Lisa. "Hey," I said when she answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "Remember when you said to trust my gut? Well, you were right, and I need your help." Lisa listened as I poured out everything I'd discovered. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, "What do you need me to do?" I smiled, feeling a spark of my old self returning. I need you to help me catch him in the act. Are you in?" "Absolutely," Lisa replied without hesitation. "That bastard won't know what hit him." As I hung up, I looked around our apartment. The photos of us on the walls, the mingled books on the shelves, the shared life we'd built. It all looked different now, tainted by Daniel's betrayal. But I wasn't going to let this break me. No, I was going to come out stronger. Daniel might have shattered our life together, but I was going to pick up the pieces and build something better. With renewed determination, I turned back to my notebook. The investigation wasn't over. It was just beginning. And when it was done, Daniel would realize he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Because nobody, not even the man I'd loved for years, was going to make a fool out of me and get away with it. The next few days were a blur of investigation and false leads. I felt like a detective in one of those crime novels I love to read. Except this mystery was tearing my life apart. With Lisa's help, I set up a plan to track Daniel's movements more closely. We created a shared online document where I logged every suspicious activity, every unexplained absence, every vague excuse he gave me. "He's working late again tonight," I told Lisa over the phone one evening. "Says it's a big project deadline." "Uh-huh," Lisa replied skeptically. "And I bet if we check that tracking app, he'll be anywhere but the office." I pulled up the app, my heart racing. But to my surprise, the little blue dot was exactly where it should be, at his workplace downtown. He's actually at the office," I said, frowning. "Huh," Lisa mused. "Maybe he is telling the truth this time." I felt a pang of guilt. Was I jumping to conclusions? Maybe all of this was just a series of misunderstandings and coincidences. The next day, I decided to surprise Daniel at work with lunch. I told myself it was a peace offering, a way to reconnect. But deep down, I knew I was hoping to catch him in a lie. As I walked into his office building, my palms were sweating. What if he wasn't there? What if I saw something I couldn't unsee? But when I reached his floor, there he was, hunched over his computer, looking stressed and tired. "Rachel," he exclaimed when he saw me, his face lighting up. What are you doing here?" I held up the takeout bag, forcing a smile. "Thought you could use a break and some food." He grinned, pulling me in for a kiss. "You're the best. I've been going crazy with this project." As we ate lunch in his office, chatting about mundane things, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Daniel really was just stressed about work. That evening, I called Lisa again. "I think I might have been overreacting," I admitted. He really does seem swamped with work." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "Maybe," she said finally. "But don't let your guard down just yet. Remember all the evidence you found." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. She was right. I couldn't ignore everything I'd discovered. The next day, I decided to dig deeper into Daniel's work claims. I called a friend who worked at the same company, casually asking about the big project everyone was supposedly working on. "A big project?" My friend sounded confused. "I haven't heard about anything major going on. It's been pretty quiet lately, actually." My heart sank. Another lie. That night, when Daniel came home late again, I was ready. "How's the big project going?" I asked innocently. He launched into a detailed explanation about deadlines and client demands. I nodded along, my stomach churning. Every word out of his mouth was a lie. As the week progressed, I found myself on an emotional roller coaster. One moment, I'd convinced myself that Daniel was innocent, that I was creating problems where there were none. The next, I'd uncover another inconsistency, another hole in his stories. I checked his credit card statements again, looking for any new suspicious charges. Nothing stood out. Was he getting smarter about hiding his tracks? I even went so far as to follow him one evening when he said he was meeting colleagues for drinks. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad spy movie, as I trailed him through the city streets. But he went exactly where he said he would, meeting a group of people I recognized from his office Christmas party. As I watched them laughing and chatting through the bar window, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Why couldn't I find the smoking gun I was looking for? "Maybe we're going about this all wrong," Lisa suggested when I called her, dejected after another dead end. Instead of trying to catch him in the act, why don't we set a trap? "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "Well, what if we created a situation where he'd have to choose between you and this other woman? If she even exists, that is." I mulled it over. It was risky, but it might just work. "What did you have in mind?" We spent the next hour hatching a plan. It was devious, perhaps a bit cruel, but I was past caring. I needed to know the truth, one way or another. As I hung up the phone, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. No more passive investigating, no more waiting for Daniel to slip up. I was going to take control of this situation. I looked at our wedding photo on the nightstand, at Daniel's smiling face. "I'm going to find out what you're hiding," I whispered to his frozen image. "And God help you if it's what I think it is." With a mix of determination and dread, I started preparing for our plan. In a few days, I'd either have the proof I needed to confront Daniel, or I'd have to face the possibility that I'd let my suspicions ruin our marriage for nothing. Either way, things were about to change, and I was ready for it. Lisa and I spent the next few days meticulously planning our trap. We decided to create a fake social media profile for a non-existent college reunion, scheduled for the same weekend as Daniel's next business trip. The goal was to see if he'd cancel his plans to attend this fabricated event with me. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa asked as we put the finishing touches on our fake event page. "It feels a bit extreme," I sighed, staring at the computer screen. "I know, but I need to know the truth, Lisa. I can't keep living like this, second-guessing everything he says and does." With trembling fingers, I hit publish on the event page. Now all I had to do was wait for Daniel to see it. That evening, as we were having dinner, I casually brought up the reunion. "Oh, did you see that post about our college get-together next month?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel looked up from his plate, confusion etched on his face. "College reunion? I don't remember seeing anything about that." I pulled out my phone, showing him the event page. "Look, it's the same weekend as your business trip. Maybe you could reschedule. It would be so nice to see everyone again." I watched his face carefully as he scrolled through the page. Was that a flicker of panic in his eyes? I'm not sure if I can reschedule," he said slowly. "This trip is pretty important." "More important than reconnecting with old friends?" I pressed, my heart racing. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was uncomfortable. Let me see what I can do, okay? No promises, though." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course. Just let me know." Over the next few days, I watched Daniel like a hawk. He seemed distracted, constantly checking his phone with a furrowed brow. Was he trying to figure out how to get out of the reunion? Or was he communicating with his mystery woman, trying to salvage their plans? I decided to up the ante. I created a group chat with some of our actual college friends, discussing the reunion and how excited we all were. Daniel was included in the chat, and I saw him read the messages without responding. As the days ticked by and Daniel still hadn't given me an answer about the reunion, I felt my frustration growing. I needed a new approach. That's when I remembered something. Daniel's old college roommate, Mike, who now lived in another city. Daniel and Mike weren't particularly close anymore, but they still kept in touch occasionally. If anyone could verify whether this reunion was real, it would be Mike. With a mix of nervousness and determination, I found Mike's number in Daniel's contacts and gave him a call. "Hey Mike, it's Rachel, Daniel's wife," I said when he answered. "Rachel, long time no talk. How are you?" Mike sounded genuinely pleased to hear from me. We exchanged pleasantries for a few minutes before I steered the conversation towards my real purpose. "So, are you planning to come to the reunion next month?" I asked casually. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Reunion? What reunion?" I felt a mix of triumph and despair. "The college reunion," I pressed. "Didn't you see the event page?" "No, I haven't seen anything about a reunion," Mike replied, sounding confused. "Are you sure it's for our year?" I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. "You know what? I might have gotten the dates mixed up. Sorry about that, Mike. It was great talking to you." I hung up, my hands shaking. This was it. The proof I needed that Daniel was lying. If he claimed to have seen the reunion post or tried to use it as an excuse to cancel his business trip, I'd know for certain he was hiding something. But as I sat there, staring at my phone, a new thought occurred to me. What if Daniel called Mike himself to verify the reunion? My entire plan could unravel. In a panic, I called Lisa. "We need to take this to the next level," I said as soon as she answered. "I have an idea, but it's going to require some serious tech skills." Lisa listened as I outlined my new plan. It was risky, possibly even illegal, but I was past the point of caring about the ethics of my actions. I needed to know the truth, and I needed to know it now. "Are you sure about this, Rachel?" Lisa asked when I finished explaining. "Once we do this, there's no going back." I thought about all the sleepless nights, the constant doubt, the feeling of my world crumbling around me. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "Let's do it." As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. In just a few days, I'd have irrefutable proof of Daniel's activities. But was I ready for what I might discover? I looked at our wedding photo on the mantle, at the happy, trusting smile on my face. Our first step was to gain access to Daniel's email. It felt wrong, invasive, but I pushed my guilt aside. I needed answers. Lisa, who worked in IT, helped me install a keylogger on our home computer. The next time Daniel logged in, we'd have his password. "Remember, Rachel," Lisa warned. "Once we cross this line, there's no going back." I nodded, my jaw set. "I understand. Let's do it." It didn't take long. That very evening, as Daniel was working late, again, I received an alert on my phone. We were in. With shaking hands, I logged into his email account. At first glance, everything seemed normal. Work correspondence, spam, newsletters. But then I saw it, a folder labeled Personal, my heart racing. I clicked on it. What I found made my blood run cold. Dozens of emails between Daniel and someone named Sarah. The same Sarah from his phone, I realized. As I read through their exchanges, tears blurred my vision. The intimacy, the inside jokes, the plans they'd made. It was all there in black and white. "I can't wait to see you this weekend," one email read. "These business trips are the highlight of my month." I felt sick. All those times he'd told me he was working, he'd been with her. How could I have been so blind? But I wasn't done. Now that I had proof of the affair, I needed to know more about this Sarah. Who was she? How long had this been going on? I dug deeper, searching for any clues about her identity, and then I found it, an email with her full name and workplace. Sarah Thompson, marketing executive at a rival company. With this information, finding her social media profiles was easy. As I scrolled through her photos, I felt a mix of anger and despair. She was beautiful, successful, everything I'd always feared I wasn't. But something else caught my eye. In several recent photos, Sarah was wearing a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant. It looked familiar. With a jolt, I realized why. It was the same necklace I'd found the receipt for in Daniel's drawer. Fury coursed through me. He'd bought her jewelry, expensive jewelry, while telling me we needed to cut back on our spending. I was so engrossed in my discovery that I almost didn't hear the front door open. Panic gripped me as I realized Daniel was home early. I quickly closed all the tabs, my heart pounding as I heard his footsteps approaching. "Rachel?" he called out. "Are you home?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "In here," I replied, proud of how normal my voice sounded. Daniel appeared in the doorway, smiling that smile that used to make my heart skip a beat. Now it just made me feel sick. "Hey, beautiful, what are you up to?" I forced a smile. "Just catching up on some emails." "How was work?" As he launched into a story about his day, lies, all lies. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. I had the upper hand now. I knew the truth, but I wasn't ready to confront him yet. No, I needed more. I needed ironclad proof that he couldn't talk his way out of. Over the next few days, I continued my investigation. I tracked Daniel's movements using the GPS on his phone, corroborating his whereabouts with the stories he told me. Every lie, every discrepancy, I documented meticulously. I even went so far as to follow him one day when he said he had a client meeting. My heart shattered as I watched him meet Sarah at a cafe, their easy intimacy evident even from a distance. But the final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. As I was going through our credit card statements again, I noticed a recurring charge for a storage unit. We didn't have a storage unit. Intrigued, I decided to check it out. The facility was on the outskirts of town, in an area I rarely visited. With a mixture of dread and determination, I approached the front desk. "Hi," I said, mustering up my most charming smile. "I seem to have misplaced the key to my unit. It's under the name Daniel Walker." The clerk looked skeptical. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I can't give you access without proper identification." I felt my heart sink. But then an idea struck me. "Oh, of course. How silly of me." I pulled out my driver's license. "I'm Rachel Walker, Daniel's wife. We're listed as co-renters on the unit." The clerk checked his computer, then nodded. "Ah, yes, I see that here. No problem. Mrs. Walker, I'll get you a temporary key." As I approached the unit, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key in the lock. What would I find inside? More evidence of Daniel's betrayal. The door creaked open, and I gasped. The unit was filled with furniture, nice furniture, much nicer than anything in our apartment. And there, on a small table, was a framed photo of Daniel and Sarah, looking blissfully happy. I sank to my knees, the reality of the situation hitting me like a physical blow. This wasn't just an affair. Daniel was planning a whole new life, a life that didn't include me. As I sat there, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion were still there, but now they were overshadowed by a fierce, burning anger. Daniel had lied to me, betrayed me, made a fool of me, but no more. I stood up, wiping away my tears. It was time to confront him, to show him that he'd messed with the wrong woman. With renewed determination, I locked up the storage unit and headed home. I had all the evidence I needed now. It was time to set the final stage of my plan into motion. Daniel Walker had no idea what was coming for him. I spent the entire night preparing for the confrontation. My emotions swung wildly between rage, heartbreak, and a grim determination to see this through. By morning, I had everything ready. A meticulously organized folder of evidence, a carefully rehearsed speech, and a steely resolve that surprised even me. Daniel was supposed to leave for another business trip that afternoon. I decided to strike just before he was set to depart. As I heard him moving around upstairs, packing his bag, my heart raced. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath and called out, "Daniel, can you come down here for a minute? We need to talk." There was a pause, then his voice floated down. "Can it wait, honey? I'm running late for my flight." "No," I said firmly. It can't wait. A few moments later, Daniel appeared at the bottom of the stairs, eye suitcase in hand. He looked annoyed, but there was also a flicker of something else in his eyes. Nervousness. "What's going on, Rachel?" he asked, setting down his bag. I gestured to the dining room table, where I'd laid out the folder of evidence. "Sit down, Daniel. We have a lot to discuss." He hesitated, glancing at his watch. "Rachel, I really don't have time for—" "Sit down." My voice was ice cold, leaving no room for argument. Surprise flashed across his face at my tone, but he complied, sinking into a chair. I took a seat opposite him, my hands resting on the closed folder. "Daniel," I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "I know about Sarah." The color drained from his face. What? Who's Sarah?" I almost laughed at his pathetic attempt to lie. Instead, I opened the folder and started laying out papers one by one. "Sarah Thompson, marketing executive. The woman you've been sleeping with for how long exactly? 6 months? A year?" Daniel's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. I pressed on, my voice gaining strength with each word. "I know about the weekend trips, the late nights at the office that were really dates with her. I know about the necklace you bought her, the one you told me we couldn't afford when I admired it in the store window." His eyes widened in shock as I continued to lay out email printouts. Bank statements, photos from the storage unit. "Rachel, I can explain," he finally stammered. "Explain?" I scoffed. "Explain how you've been lying to me for months? Explain how you've been planning a whole new life behind my back?" I pulled out the photo I'd found in the storage unit, slamming it down on the table. "Explain this, Daniel. Explain why you have a secret storage unit full of furniture and mementos with your girlfriend while you tell me we need to cut back on expenses." Daniel's face crumpled. "Rachel, please, it's not what you think." "Not what I think?" My voice rose, anger finally breaking through my calm facade. "Then what is it, Daniel? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been living a double life, making a complete fool out of me." He reached for my hand, but I yanked it away. "Don't you dare touch me," I hissed. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears forming in his eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. It just did." I laughed bitterly. "It just happened? What, you accidentally fell into bed with her, accidentally lied to me day after day, accidentally planned a future with her while pretending to build one with me?" Daniel hung his head, unable to meet my gaze. I don't know what to say." "How about the truth?" I demanded. "For once in your miserable life, tell me the truth. How long has this been going on?" He swallowed hard. "A year," he admitted quietly. "It started as just flirting. But then you decided to throw away our marriage." I finished for him. He nodded miserably. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "You hurt me more than I ever thought possible." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy between us. Then, gathering my strength, I stood up. "I want you out," I said firmly. "Pack your things and leave, today." Daniel's head snapped up. "What, Rachel, please, can't we talk about this? Can't we try to work it out?" I laughed humorlessly. "Work it out? There's nothing to work out, Daniel. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." "But where will I go?" he asked, his voice small. "I don't know, and I don't care," I replied coldly. "Go to Sarah. Go to a hotel. Go to hell for all I care. Just get out of my house." Daniel stood up slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Can I at least explain?" "No," I cut him off. "I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Just go." As he trudged up the stairs to pack his things, I sank back into my chair, suddenly exhausted. The confrontation I'd been building up to for weeks was over, and I felt empty. An hour later, I watched from the window as Daniel loaded his bags into his car. He paused at the driver's door, looking back at the house, at me, one last time. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of regret in his eyes. Then he got in the car and drove away. As the sound of his engine faded, I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It was over. The lies, the deception, the double life, all of it was out in the open now. I should have felt relieved, triumphant even. Instead, I just felt numb. I walked through our now empty house, my footsteps echoing in the silence. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing would ever be the same again. As I crawled into bed that night, alone for the first time in years, the reality of my new situation began to sink in. I'd uncovered the truth, confronted the lies, and stood up for myself. But now what? As exhaustion finally overcame me, one thought kept circling in my mind. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The days following Daniel's departure blurred together in a haze of grief and confusion. I oscillated wildly between feeling empowered by my actions and completely lost without the life I'd known for so long. One morning, I woke up and couldn't remember what day it was. Had it been a week since Daniel left? 2? Time seemed to have lost all meaning. I dragged myself out of bed, catching a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. I hardly recognized the woman staring back at me, pale, with dark circles under her eyes and unwashed hair. Was this really what I'd become? As I shuffled into the kitchen, my phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. Checking in. How are you holding up? I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. How was I holding up? I didn't even know. Instead of replying, I tossed the phone aside and opened the refrigerator. The sight of the half-empty shelves made my stomach churn. When was the last time I'd gone grocery shopping? When was the last time I'd eaten a proper meal? I closed the fridge and slumped onto the couch, our wedding album catching my eye on the coffee table. Without thinking, I picked it up, flipping through the pages. There we were, young and in love, our whole lives ahead of us. Daniel's arms were around me, both of us beaming at the camera. We looked so happy, so sure of our future together. It was all a lie, I whispered to the empty room, slamming the album shut. Suddenly, the walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in on me. I needed to get out, to breathe, to do something, anything other than wallow in my misery. I threw on some clothes, not caring if they matched, and headed out the door. I had no destination in mind. I just walked, letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted to go. Before I knew it, I found myself at the park where Daniel had proposed. I stood there, staring at the bench where he'd gotten down on one knee, and felt a fresh wave of pain wash over me. "Are you okay, miss?" A concerned voice broke through my thoughts. I turned to see an elderly woman watching me with worried eyes. It was only then that I realized I was crying. I'm fine," I mumbled, wiping my tears hastily. "Just remembering." The woman nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes memories can be painful, but they can also remind us of our strength." I managed a weak smile, thanking her before continuing my aimless wandering. Her words echoed in my mind. Strength. Did I have any left? As I walked, I found myself questioning everything. Had our entire relationship been a lie? Were there signs I'd missed from the beginning? Was I just not enough for him? The doubts swirled in my mind, growing louder with each step. By the time I made it back to the apartment, I was drowning in self-pity and insecurity. I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally exhausted. My eyes landed on the folder of evidence I'd compiled, the tangible proof of Daniel's betrayal. Suddenly, anger flared up inside me. How dare he make me question myself? How dare he destroy the life we'd built together? In a fit of rage, I grabbed the folder and stormed into the bedroom. I pulled out every photo of us, every memento of our relationship, and threw them into a pile on the floor. With shaking hands, I found a lighter and set the pile ablaze in the bathtub. I watched as the flames consumed our past, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. but as the fire died down, leaving nothing but ashes, the emptiness returned. What had I done? I'd destroyed the evidence, the proof that I wasn't crazy, that I had been right all along. Panic set in. What if Daniel tried to deny everything? What if he tried to make me look like the unstable one? I sank to the bathroom floor, overwhelmed by the realization of how impulsive and destructive my actions had been. This wasn't me. I wasn't this person, this broken, angry shell of a woman. As I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of my former life, a thought occurred to me. Maybe I didn't know who I was anymore. For so long, I'd been Daniel's wife. My identity had been tied to our relationship, our shared dreams and goals. But now, who was I without him? The question haunted me as I cleaned up the mess I'd made. With each piece of charred paper I swept away, I felt like I was losing a part of myself. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Daniel's side of the bed cold and empty. Sleep eluded me as my mind raced with unanswered questions and unfounded fears. What if I never recovered from this? What if the pain and betrayal consumed me, leaving nothing but a bitter, distrustful woman in its wake? As the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, I made a decision. I couldn't go on like this. I needed help. With trembling fingers, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I'd been avoiding. "Hello?" A groggy voice answered. "Mom," I said, my voice breaking. "I need you." As I poured out the whole story to my mother, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't healing, not yet, but it was a start. When I finally hung up, exhausted but somehow lighter, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The woman looking back at me was still pale, still tired, still hurting. But there was something else there too, a tiny spark of determination in her eyes. I might be lost, confused, and broken, but I was still here, still fighting. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for now. As I crawled back into bed, pulling the covers tight around me, I made a promise to myself. I would find my way through this darkness. I would rediscover who I was without Daniel, and someday I would emerge stronger on the other side. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be quick, but it would be worth it, because I was worth it. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, warming my face as I slowly opened my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I didn't immediately feel that crushing weight of sadness. Instead, I felt different, lighter, somehow. I sat up, stretching, and caught sight of the calendar on my bedside table. 3 months had passed since that fateful day when I confronted Daniel. 3 months of tears, anger, and soul-searching, but also 3 months of healing and rediscovery. My mom's visit had been a turning point. She'd stayed for 2 weeks, helping me pick up the pieces of my shattered life. With her encouragement, I'd started therapy, joined a support group for divorced women, and slowly began to rebuild my sense of self. As I padded into the kitchen to make coffee, I smiled at the bright yellow walls. Repainting the apartment had been my first step in reclaiming my space. Gone were the muted tones Daniel had preferred, replaced by colors that made me feel alive. My phone buzzed with a message from Lisa. "Ready for our run?" I grinned, typing back a quick, "Be there in 15?" Who would have thought I'd become a runner? But those early morning jogs with Lisa had become a lifeline, a way to clear my head and strengthen my body. As I laced up my sneakers, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was different from the broken shell I'd been just a few months ago. My cheeks had a healthy glow. My eyes sparkled with determination. I looked happy. Lisa was waiting for me at our usual spot in the park. As we set off on our run, she asked, "So, big day today, huh? You nervous?" I considered the question as we jogged along the familiar path. A little, I admitted, but mostly excited. Today was my first day back at work after a leave of absence. But I wasn't returning to my old job at the library. Instead, I was starting a new position at a local nonprofit, helping women rebuild their lives after difficult divorces. "You're going to be amazing," Lisa assured me. "Your experience, it's going to help so many people." I nodded, feeling a surge of pride. Who would have thought that the darkest period of my life would lead to something so positive? After our run and a quick shower, I stood in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear. My eyes fell on a dress I hadn't worn in years, a bold red number that Daniel had always said was too much for me. With a grin, I slipped it on. It fit perfectly, hugging my curves in all the right places. I felt confident, powerful. This was exactly who I wanted to be on my first day. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone rang. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the caller ID, Daniel. For a moment, I hesitated. We hadn't spoken since that day he left. But I took a deep breath, reminding myself of how far I'd come. I could handle this. "Hello," I answered, my voice steady. "Rachel," Daniel said, sounding uncertain. I hope I'm not bothering you. I just wanted to let you know that I've signed the divorce papers. They're on their way to your lawyer." I closed my eyes, letting out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Thank you for telling me," I said calmly. There was a pause. Then Daniel spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "Rachel, I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know that. A few months ago, those words would have shattered me. Now, they washed over me, leaving me feeling free." "I appreciate that, Daniel," I replied. "I hope you find what you're looking for." As I hung up, I realized I meant it. The anger, the bitterness, it was gone. In its place was a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. With a spring in my step, I headed out the door. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. My first day at work flew by in a whirlwind of introductions, orientations, and excitement. As I shared my story with my new colleagues and the women we were helping, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. That evening, as I walked home, I took a detour through the park where Daniel had proposed. The bench where he'd gotten down on one knee came into view, and I paused, memories washing over me. But this time, the memories didn't bring pain. Instead, I felt grateful for the journey that had brought me here. Every tear, every moment of doubt, every sleepless night, they had all led me to this moment. I sat down on the bench, watching the sun set over the city, my life. As the sky turned a brilliant orange, I pulled out a small notebook from my bag. I'd started journaling as part of my therapy, and it had become a daily ritual. "Dear future Rachel," I wrote. "Today was a good day. Today, I realized that I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving. The pain that once threatened to destroy me has become my strength. The love I thought I'd lost forever, I found again in myself." I closed the notebook, feeling a sense of contentment wash over me. The path ahead wasn't clear, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead. As I stood up to leave, I caught sight of my reflection in a nearby pond. The woman looking back at me was strong, confident, and ready for whatever life had in store. I smiled, realizing that I had finally done it. I had given myself the greatest gift of all, the chance to fall in love again, this time with the woman I had become. With one last look at the setting sun, I turned and walked away, ready to embrace the next chapter of my story, and this time, I was the author.